Episode number 11 of Making a Case. Black people suffer from a severe case of cognitive dissonance. Stay tuned. You're not going to want to miss this. Hey, welcome back to another episode of Making a Case. I am your host, Dr. Jacob Isom, author, educator, speaker, entrepreneur. Hey, and we back, man. Thank you for once again stopping by and checking me out. Okay. For those new to the channel, Making a Case is a YouTube show where I make a case on a topic or a question, and I bring research to back up my points and make my case. All right. So without further ado, let's get into it. But before we get into it, as always, we got two channel norms. One, we attack points and not people. And two, we don't do all the cussing and defamatory remarks. We like to keep it professional over here. All right. Edutainment, as I like to say. So let's get into the topic for episode number 11. Black people suffer from a severe case of cognitive dissonance. All right. Here in a second, I'm going to give you a definition of cognitive dissonance because some people may not know what it is. So once again, I like to give definitions so that we all on the same page, right? But I'm going to give you a couple of examples as well as show you another example from a platform that I'm going to be reading the definition from. But cognitive dissonance can go a little something like this, right? We understand that gangs are detrimental to our communities, our culture, our society, right? But we still think they're cool. We see people that have flags in their pocket. We see people throwing up gang signs, and they may not even be in a gang. All right. Cognitive dissonance. All right. Something else that is another great example for the fact that we have a quote unquote no snitching culture, right? But if someone was to be hurt in your family or to hurt you, somebody in your family member will want somebody to speak up and go to the police. So while we maintaining a no snitching culture, we don't think people should be telling the police if a crime happens. We still want to be protected by the police, and we still want people to quote unquote tell if someone harmed them or their loved one. Cognitive dissonance. All right. So let me actually read to you the definition of cognitive dissonance. And I get this from a platform that's actually called the Decision Lab. And it's just the definition I want to read to it. I want to show you an example as well. So, what is cognitive dissonance? Cognitive dissonance describes when we avoid having conflicting beliefs and attitude because it makes us feel uncomfortable. The clash is usually dealt with by rejecting, debunking, or avoiding new information. So, on one hand, we believe something that conflicts with reality, right? Now, they show us an example. I want to scroll here. So, animal cruelty is wrong, but on the other end, but they taste so good. So if you're a person that believe animal cruelty is wrong, if you stand with PETA, but you still eat meat, yeah, it's a little conflicting, right? We can also say, yeah, that's hypocritical, right? And that's essentially, if you want to boil it down to one word, that's what cognitive dissonance is, right? It's being hypocritical. You're saying one thing, but you're doing another. All right. So the reason why I believe that Black people suffer from it the most is because we know something is extremely bad for us, but on the other end, we want things to be great for us. And we see it rampant all throughout our community. So in this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you 3 pieces of evidence that show you Black people suffer the most from cognitive dissonance. Now, we know every community does, right? But Black people in general, because of our history of trauma, because of our history of enslavement, bondage, right? and the identity crisis that we go through as a people, it affects us just a little bit more. All right. So without further ado, let's get into my first piece of evidence. All right. For my piece of evidence number one, though, why I believe Black people suffer the most for cognitive dissonance is our image of how we're portrayed in the media, right? So there's no secret that Black people, African Americans, however you want to define us, have historically gotten a bad rep on television, in the media, in the public sphere. Let's just say that, right? And not to mention just media, but I'm talking about movies, music, right? So I'm kind of combining all of these, right? Just how we look to other cultures and other communities. Let's say that, right? So we've always complained about how we look on film and things of that nature, right? So there's no secret, right? So I have a platform that actually is from Pew Resource Center. If you don't know what Pew Research Center is, it's one of the most prestigious, right, well-known platforms when it comes to research, right? So they have an article called "The 8 Facts About Black Americans and the News," right? So I want to quickly go over those 8 facts because I believe they were actually pretty good in making my case of why I believe that we understand that our image is a certain way on TV, yet we continue to perpetuate it, right? So we can easily not participate in the degradation of our image, but we do it. And of course, we know the reason why we do it, right? Money. So we sell our soul. So obviously, when someone put a check in front of our face, our image is not important to us anymore. Getting that bag is. So let's get into the article real quick. Let's get into fact number one. Black are more likely than other racial and ethnic groups in the U.S. to get their news on TV. About 3/4 of Black adults, 76%, say that at least sometimes get news on TV, compared with 62% of both white and Hispanic adults and 52% of Asian. And 38% of Black Americans say they prefer to get their news on TV over any other platform. Again, higher than people of other racial or ethnic backgrounds. And I imagine a lot of that is older Black people because, of course, nowadays most young people get their news from social media. I mean, it just kind of is what it is. But so, of course, what do we see a lot of time? If we're just watching like the news, like Channel 5, Channel 4, whatever you get your news from, we're going to be seeing crime, right? Who's more likely going to be the criminal we see picture pop up? Unfortunately, African Americans, right? So that's going to skew our perception, not only when it comes to other communities, but it's going to reinforce what we even think about our own self. All right. Number two, Black Americans are more likely than white Americans to get news from certain social media sites. That's what I just brought up, right? The shares of Black adults who say they regularly get news on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok are each higher than the shares of white Americans get their news on these platforms. Like Americans overall, Black Americans get news from a wide variety of sources in addition to social media, including other digital platforms such as news, websites, and search engines. So one thing that Black Americans definitely do more than any other racial group is we definitely get a lot of news that we believe without fact checking and doing our own research is from social media, right? So the images that we see not only just come from TV, not only just come from news, but on social media. So all these different platforms, these different medias that we're seeing ourselves and how we're being portrayed. Yet we as a community keep portraying this. So we complained about the fact that we're being portrayed one way, but yet and still we keep portraying ourselves in that way. Cognitive dissonance. All right. Number three, Black Americans see issues with the way Black people are covered in the news. According to the 2023 survey, for example, 63% of Black adults say the news they see or hear about Black people is often more negative than the news about other racial and ethnic groups. And 8 in 10 say that at least sometimes see or hear news coverage about Black people that is racist or racially insensitive, including 39% who see such coverage extremely fairly often. One thing that we really got to bring up, and this is why that cognitive dissonance is so real, is the fact that yes, we understand that racism is alive and well, discrimination. Yet we do it amongst ourselves. Colorism is very real in the black community, and not saying it's not in other communities, but it's very real. We have a light skin versus dark skin. The gender war is extremely formidable in the black community. We got black men against black women. We got light skinned men against dark skinned men, like etc. It's that infighting. That's why it's so easy for us to get on TV and just disrespect and talk about one another. Let's go on to the next one. Number 4, Black Americans see a number of steps that could improve news coverage of Black people. For example, most Black adults say it is extremely or very important that journalists and reporters cover all sides of the issues and understand the history of the issues when covering Black people. Many also say it is crucial for journalists to personally engage with the people they cover and to advocate for Black people. So now I agree in the respect that, yes, we should have more Black journalists, right? Because they would probably be more than likely to give a fair assessment of the story, right? Versus other cultures just read it and maybe in their mind and just hear these. You know what I want to say, right? I'm not going to say it. Hear these Black people acting up again, right? So that's a fair point. But yet and still, of course, we do have a lot of Black journalists on air that, let's just say, that are influenced by other cultures. All right. So even their representation of a Black person or a Black story may not be fair. All right. Number 5, Black Americans tend to be underrepresented in U.S. newsrooms. Just 6% of reporting journalists are Black, according to a 2022 Pew Research Center survey of U.S. journalists. This is well below the Black share of U.S. workers and adults. About half of all U.S. journalists say their news organizations did not have enough diversity when it comes to race and ethnicity. This is much larger than the shares of journalists who say the same about gender, sexual orientation, and other aspects of diversity. So, I mean, that is not shocking that Black people are underrepresented in newsrooms, which, of course, it'll be harder to get Black stories. It'll be harder to actually get stories that portray Black people in a favorable light. So that all contributes. But once again, I go back to with YouTube and other mediums that we get direct to the consumer nowadays, like we're still having an issue with how Black people continue to portray themselves, right? So now, yes, we got Fox, we got MSNBC, and all these other platforms, but their audience, particularly the younger audience, is direct to consumer. Like YouTube is huge now, right? Social media. So a lot of people getting their news from Instagram, TikTok, and things of that nature. So what is the excuse now? Number 6, many Black Americans say it's important to get news about race and racial inequality from Black journalists, but fewer feel this way when it comes to news in general. 4 in 10 Black Americans say it's extremely or very important that the news they get, that the news they get about race and racial inequality comes from Black journalists. A much smaller share says it's highly important that the news they get in general, regardless of the topic, comes from Black important. So once again, just talk about getting the news from Black journalists. Number 7, about a quarter of Black Americans say they extremely or fairly often get news from Black news. These outlets, which have a long history in the U.S., are defined as those created by Black people and focus on providing news and information specific to Black audience. Another 40% of Black adults say they sometimes get news from such outlets. So there are more Black news outlets out there. A lot of them are on YouTube or they're on smaller platforms, and they're probably just not getting the viewership from the Black audience like they should be doing. They're out there. It's just that we got to search for them. And the last one is Black Americans are more likely than other racial and ethnic groups to feel that the news media misunderstand them because of their race or some other different demographic trait. That's similar to, I think, the 3rd or 4th one that said that Black people feel like that they don't get a fair shake. So I just wanted to read that to you because, yes, the media coverage or the way we're portrayed in the media is not always fair, but look at the music that we create, right? Look at how we talk about each other. Look at how we talk to each other. Gangster rap, right? All these different things have an impact, right? And so there's no excuse for us to look at how other communities view us based on how we portray each other. Look at the shows Love and Hip Hop and Bad Girl Clubs and all this stuff. When we look at these shows, who was mostly on these shows? So we have a part to play. We can't just keep playing the victim. Okay? Cognitive dissonance. So let's get to the second. So my second piece of evidence of why I believe that Black people suffer the most severe case of cognitive dissonance is the fact that we believe that being smart is sounding white. So we've been, and I in particular have dealt with it for a very long time. Unfortunately, in the African American community and a lot of urban neighborhoods, that you get bullied for being smart. You get picked on for speaking proper diction, right? So these has always been quote unquote sounding white, right? Speaking the English language, right? Not using slang, not cussing a lot, if it, at all, right? So unfortunately, this is cognitive dissonance at its finest because that like we want to be taken seriously. We want to get respected in the larger world, right? But at the same time, we also want to push the fact that we want to be able to use slang and talk with vernacular and speak a certain way, like cognitive dissonance, right? So I actually have research. I believe it's a dissertation actually, and I'm just going to read the abstract to you. It's from actually Purdue University by a young lady named Amanda Strickland. So I want to read this to you. She actually did a study, and the name of that study was Sounding White, African American Attitude Towards Whiteness in the Speech of African Americans, right? And I imagine this has been studied by other people as well. So here's how the abstract goes. The purpose of this study was to examine what it means to be an ethnic community member and be told that you sound white. This was done by interviewing members of the African American community. The information from personal interviews, the focus group analyzed using thematic analysis. Multiple things were revealed regarding the definition of sounding white, emotional and social consequences, and acceptance into the African American community. Although multiple definitions of what it means to sound white were revealed in this exploratory research, it can be concluded that to sound white means to speak proper English, to talk in an educated manner, or overly formal. Now, white people are not the only ones that exhibit these traits, right? But due to Black people history with white people, particularly slavery, right? We've always unfortunately looked at white people as our master. Most people work for a white boss, are employed by a white company. So we look at, and even when you look at the ramification is white meaning purity, right? So these things affect the psyche of Black people. Cognitive dissonance. Let's keep reading. Uh, these findings suggest that reverse language discrimination exists within the African American community amongst non-AAVE African American vernacular English speakers. And African American speech can be viewed as a measure of his or her Blackness. So once again, how we speak to each other, how we use the N word to each other, how we use slang, that determines your Blackness. What is Kamala Harris going through right now? Is she Black enough? This has been going on in the Black community for decades. People have to prove their Blackness. With this knowledge, linguistic programs should be implemented to promote language diversity and acceptance amongst AAVE speaking community and combat linguistic discrimination. So Black people have been going through linguistic discrimination against who? Their own people. So Black people make fun of how you talk. We make fun of how you dress. We make fun of your hairstyle. We make fun if you smart. We make fun of you if you too dark, if you too light. Cognitive dissonance, and then we'll go and really get upset if somebody outside the community speak against us in one of these different formats, against how our hair looks, how dark we are. We don't want other people doing it to us, but we'll do it to each other. It's no different than what we've already heard, right? Well, I can talk about my brother and sister, but you better not do it. Cognitive dissonance, severe case. All right. All right, let's get into our last piece of evidence. For my last piece of evidence of why I believe Black people suffer from a severe case of cognitive dissonance is quite simply the family structure, right? I think everybody understands how important the family structure is, how important having a two-parent household is, right? The numbers support it, right? And what I want to do is I want to actually show you some stats because, of course, stats are important. Why the two-parent household is important, particularly in the African American / Black community, right? So I pulled up a website from the Institute for Family Studies, and the title of this is Less Poverty, Less Prison, More College, What Two Parents Mean for Black and White Children. And of course, our focus is going to be on the Black side of things. So let's scroll down, and really I want to get to the stats, if you bear with me. All right. So child poverty rate by child's race and living arrangement. So we have living with two parents in the first marriage, we got 13%. Living with a parent, 46%. So this is child poverty by child's race and family living. So as you can see, there's a huge discrepancy of living with two parents and living with a single parent. Right? Let's keep scrolling. Colleges and prisons for Black young adults by family structure. So growing up with two biological parents, we at 28% graduated from college. Single parent, we got 15% graduated from college. Ever been incarcerated with biological is only 8%, but then we look at step parent, single parent, we up to 14. Keep scrolling. College and prison for young Black men and women by family structure. Growing up with two biological parents, graduated from college 21%, but then with step parent, single parent, we had 12. Incarceration, 14 with two biological parents, we had 26 and 24 with step parent and single parent. That's Black men. Then if you go to young Black women, 36% graduated from college. Then you got 18 for single parent, 25 step parent. And then, of course, incarceration, because women don't go nearly to prison as much as men do, young Black men. And here's the Black and white comparison. All white young adults, two parents. Look at that, 47% versus 23. Young white men, 41 versus 18. I scrolled too far. No, I didn't. Let's see. And to be honest with you, that's all I really want to show you. I thought of something else that I want to read to you in this, really. But I want to show you those stats because, well, let me read the highlights. I think they're worth mentioning. Children are significantly more likely to avoid poverty in prison and to graduate from college. They are raised in an intact two-parent household. From poverty to college graduation to incarceration, Black children and young adults from two-parent family are more likely to be flourishing than the white peers from single-parent families. And I think a lot of that is due to that it happens so much in the Black community. Single-parent household. More likely, of course, we know that would be raised by women. On average, Black young adults from families headed by their mother and father are more likely to be flourishing educationally than Black young adults from non-intact homes. So, of course, we know the moral of the story is we have to do everything we can in order to keep mom and dad in the household. Because single parent household, your kid more likely to end up in prison, more likely not to go to college, more likely not to graduate from high school, graduate from college, more likely to suffer from depression, etc. The list goes on and on, right? So if we understand this about keeping households intact, why are we not doing everything in our power in order to improve relationships between Black men and Black women? Why aren't there government funded programs? Why aren't there people trying to support a law or the bill that paying for marriage counseling, therapy for couples, particularly in the Black community? Where are these social programs? Because clearly we understand the numbers, but are we proactive? We coming up with solutions to how we can put the family back together. Dissonance. And to be honest with you, I'm not putting it on the government. It's not the government responsibility. It's on the Black community responsibility. We can't keep on bashing each other online, talking bad about Black men and Black women, and we're not getting nothing accomplished. Our kids are suffering because of this, because we're in our ego state. While we continue to talk about each other, we continue to have sex with each other and make these babies out of wedlock. It just is what it is. I'm sorry it had to be said. So there's a lot of things to clean up. But we can't keep saying we understand the importance of a two-parent household and we got the numbers to back it up, but we're not doing anything about it. And we continue to see a rise of single-parent households. We continue to see a rise of single people. We'll continue to see a rise of people dying alone. And with that thought, let's get into our closing statement. You have to excuse my passion because one thing that I'm very passionate about is relationships, people improving themselves, African Americans or Black people. I love all people, but my people, we need the most direction, the most guidance, and we understand why. Okay? There's a lot of hurt, there's a lot of trauma, there's a lot of blaming, there's a lot of victimhood going on. And I wouldn't feel right if I just sat back and didn't say anything and didn't express myself, right? I want to bring to you research, stats. I want to bring to you information about how we got in this predicament, but we can't continue to keep staying in a situation where we know better, right? We understand what hurts us. We understand what's keep holding us back. But we can't keep going on podcasts and on social media and in news channels and on platforms, constantly addressing what the problem is and what caused the problem, but we don't have any solutions. At this point, we should only be solution-based, solution-oriented at this point. So me making a video saying Black people suffer from a severe case of cognitive dissonance is not to bash Black people. It's to bring awareness that we keep saying one thing, but we keep doing another. And then we keep wanting to play victim. When a kid is shot by the police that looks different from us, we outrage. We need the same amount of outrage when somebody else looks the same is killing somebody. Cognitive dissonance. It's all wrong at the end of the day. Murder is murder. It doesn't matter what color you are. We have to stop this. And you got to start now. I think that's a great point for us to end this video once again. I appreciate those that's rocking with me. Please make sure you subscribe. Make sure you share the video. You hit that like, hit that bell so you know when new videos drop. Of course, I'll be dropping another video real soon, all right? So please make sure you subscribe. As always, go get the merch. Go get your books. Link's going to be in the description. I am you, you are me. Love, always love, eternal. Remember, the worst thing you can do is lie to yourself. And I believe I made that case. All right? Hey, deuce.